Hi there! In this lesson I will start teaching you some Spanish modal verbs. Okay? So which are the modal verbs? The modal verbs are those verbs that we use together with another verb. Okay? For example, I should go. I should eat. Okay? The verb to should, the verb here should, or the verb to want, right? I want to go, I want to stay. Those verbs are modal verbs, and we use them together with another verb that they are relating to, okay? Here in Spanish we have these four modal verbs are the most used and common ones, okay? So we will start learning these four, okay? So we have the verb poder, which means to can or to be able to, but it also means to may, okay? Poder. So this Spanish verb has two meanings: to can, to may. The verb querer, okay, that means to want. In Spanish, the verb querer also has two meanings. It means to want, right? And there it is a modal verb, okay? For example, I want to go, okay? Or it also means to love something or somebody, okay? The verb deber. Deber means to should, or to must, okay? To must or to have to. Here we have two ways of saying to must or to have to. Deber, right, a modal verb, and tener que, which literally means the same thing as to have to, because the verb tener actually means to have, yes? And to have to, which means the same thing as to must, is the same in Spanish, tener que, okay? And our fourth and last modal verb will be soler, soler, which means to use to, okay? For example, I used to eat meat. I used to eat meat, right? Yo suelo comer carne. I used to get up early. Yo suelo levantarme temprano. Soler. So, our four verbs will be poder, querer, deber, and soler. Okay? You can see that these four verbs, they belong to the second group of Spanish verbs. The verbs that end with er, okay? Er. Right? I think this is just a coincidence. It doesn't mean anything. I didn't choose them because of this. Okay, now I want you to see this. This verb, this one, and this one are irregular verbs. And this one here is regular. So, poder is an irregular verb. Querer is an irregular verb. And soler is another irregular verb. And the verb deber, that means to must or to have to, is a regular verb, okay? So since these modal verbs are very important verbs in Spanish, in the next lessons I will show you how to conjugate them, right? Mainly because these three are irregular, okay? So you cannot actually use the rule for regular verbs to conjugate these three, okay? So now let's read some examples using sentences with these words, okay? So you can see how they work. For poder, right? We will see how the first example is poder as to may. Let's see. Puedo ir. Puedo ir means may I go or can I go, right? Second example, poder as to can or be able to. No lo puedo mover. No lo puedo mover means I cannot move it, right? This means word by word, not it, I can move. Okay? Now, our third example using the verb querer, that means to want. Quiero una taza de té. Quiero una taza de té means I want a cup of tea. Quiero ir contigo. Quiero ir contigo. I want to go with you. Look at the word contigo. Con means with. Okay? With you, to say with you, there is this word that means with you, contigo. Okay? It's just one word. Debemos quedarnos en casa. Debemos quedarnos en casa means we have to stay at home. See how the verb to stay is in Spanish what we call verbo reflexivo or reflexive verb. You see, quedarnos. This literally means to stay ourselves. Okay? I know this kind of verbs doesn't exist in English. That's why it sounds awkward, right? But in Spanish, these verbs are quite common. We have to stay ourselves at home. Quedar is stay. Nos would be ourselves. En casa. We have to stay at home, or we must stay at home. Él debería ir a trabajar. Él debería ir a trabajar means he should go to work, or he must go to work. Look at this. Debería. This ending, ia, you see, is typical of the conditional tense in Spanish. Okay, so this is the conditional tense of the verb deber, right? Él debería, he should, conditional. Now with our last verb, soler, or to use to. Let me take this out. Yo suelo levantarme temprano. Yo suelo levantarme temprano. This means I used to get up early. Temprano means early. This is another reflexive verb. Look at the ending, me. This literally means to get up myself, okay? Because actually, levantar, just this first part of the verb, levantar means to lift something, right? Levantar. But to get up, that is, the verb to get up is levantarse, which literally means to lift oneself, okay? Levantarse, which is to get up, literally means to lift oneself, okay? This is another of what we call a reflexive verb in Spanish, okay? So, reflexive verbs, when we conjugate them, but this remains in infinitive, and here you see we change the ending, okay? So, levantarme would be to lift myself, or to get up, okay, in English. So, yo suelo levantarme temprano. I used to get up early. And our last example is, ella suele hablar mucho. Ella